Good evening. So I'm here to present the community survey results to you. This is a survey that we've issued every spring for the last 3 years, and prior to that issued with the help of a company called Cobalt. So you probably remember the Cobalt survey from years and years ago. Through that company, unfortunately, we were only able to issue it about every 2 to 3 years. We've now been able to issue it annually, and we're able to dig into the data in a more comprehensive fashion than ever before. So I'm excited to share this with you. I presented this last year, but I thought it was still very relevant this year, that most of the world will make decisions by either guessing or using their gut. They will be either lucky or wrong. And we do not want to be wrong, and we certainly don't want to guess or use our gut. We want to have data in front of us to make decisions. So those who took the survey this year, you can see the age distribution. Obviously, we had a large number of those in the category of 10 to 17. This was the first year that we combined this with the LACO survey, so that we had students actually taking this survey for the first time as well. And then you can see the percentage distribution of those who identified as parents or guardians, staff, students, alumni, and residents without children in our schools. And they could identify in more than one category. So you might be a resident without children in our schools, and you might also be a staff member. Or like myself, you might be a parent within the school district and also be a staff member. So there are multiple categories. We also had families join us for this survey that represent approximately 260 graduates and about 85 not yet school age children, so infants, toddlers, sort of that preschool age, and then representing over 150 private school children in our community as well. This just kind of shows you where our distribution has been over the years. So we have that far left is the parents from 16, 17, and 18. We have staff and residents, so you can kind of see where the response rates have been. So for staff, we're excited to see that it's on the steady increase. We want to see all of our staff take the time to take this survey and tell us what they think. And we'd like to see increases in the other categories as well, but we understand that sometimes, depending on the time of year that we issue this survey, and it does vary a little bit. This year we were waiting a little bit. Oakland Schools typically issues the LACO survey, and this year they declined to issue that survey. So we still had the data from last year, and we had all the question sets from last year, fortunately, so we were able to issue it just on our own so that we could at least have our own data to look at year over year. Unfortunately, we don't have that county comparison data. We are hopeful that LACO will be revived at Oakland Schools next year, and I'm championing rather hard for that up at Oakland Schools because I think it's really valuable to have the county comparison data. That said, we have a commitment to issuing this survey year over year because it does help us gauge that student satisfaction piece, whereas our previous survey didn't have that component.
Was there a budget issue, or why was LACO not?
I'm not sure. I don't have a specific response for that, but fortunately we're able to keep on keeping on with our own system. So this shows you, we asked in which schools or grades do you have children. So this shows us that we have a nice even distribution of responses across the district, which is always nice to see. And then this was an interesting question in terms of, did your children change school districts at any time? Because last year we'd asked this question, and there was a lot in the category of other, which turned out to be those who had started in one public school and come to us. We had only previously given the other options of from Bloomfield Hill Schools to private school to BHS. No, they didn't change in other. And what we found was there's 21% who identify as having previously attended another public school and now are here in Bloomfield Hill Schools. The three most important factors in choosing a school for your child really has not changed over the years that I've been here. Quality of staff has always been number one. Curriculum, test scores, and class size are always 2, 3, and 4 kind of interchangeably. And class size has really only bumped into that number 3 spot once. So pretty consistently we have quality of staff, curriculum, and test scores. So just to kind of sum it up for you, when we asked, yes?
Was the last one there, the next one there, and yes. I'm just wondering if that was changed significantly this year from last year.
It wasn't. It's fluctuated slightly, but it's always been top of mind, as it's always been top of mind for us as our number one priority as a district. So I think we are aligned with folks in that it is a very high priority. It really hasn't fluctuated that much. It really hasn't. So to sum it up, when we asked how you feel about those categories, so partner in child's education, how do you feel about district employees, district communication, preparing students for the future, finding performing arts, all of the things that you see there, most of the charts look like the one that you see represented here. So just to summarize for you, we are doing pretty well in all of these categories. There are some that are certainly doing better than others, and those are identification points for us on where to dig deeper and where to work harder. So the top is an example of year by year, just so that you can see the fluctuations from year by year, and that the data is not fluctuating greatly. So as far as feeling connected as a partner in child's education, you can say we're pretty steady in that 4 range. Financial management's pretty steady, district employees is pretty steady, and that's similar for almost all the categories that you saw in the previous slide. That said, I got a little curious because this new tool is allowing me to run really answers to my own curiosity in a much faster fashion. So one of the things I was curious is that all of these questions are posed to parents, asking them about their perception of their child's school, not their perception of us. So if you don't choose to educate your child in Bloomfield Hills schools, you're asked to reflect on your child's experience in the school in which they're currently attending, whether that's private school, charter school, what have you. So I broke out the 2 family subsets, one being Bloomfield Hills schools families, so those who have children in the district currently reflecting on their child's experience, and those who have children who live in the community attending private school and their child's experience. And I found it interesting that our families did reflect generally higher points in terms of feeling more connected as partners in their child's education, feeling that the district is more financially, better financially managed, that the employees are wonderful. The score there is quite a bigger gap. Communication, they ranked better. And then the largest gap of all was preparing students for the future. So families who had selected us for their child's education, generally speaking, had the sentiment that they believe we are preparing students for the future above and beyond the sentiment of those who had selected private school. So I thought that was interesting and thought I would just show that to you. So ratings for the following categories. I did give you the ratings for 2016, for 2017, and then again for 2018. I did highlight that food services one. That's one that's not seeing growth in the same fashion that we'd like to see. So we're actively working on that right now. We're meeting with Aramark and with our representatives through Aramark. Fortunately, we have some really great concrete feedback from the survey, from other questions that were asked, from open-ended feedback that we can then take action on. And so we'll be having those meetings and conducting even further research just so that we can improve the service that we provide. But you can see all of the other points of growth and pretty steady growth across the board. This is the overall impression and service of the district. This is out of a possible 4. I want to point that out because the previous slide was out of a possible 5. So 3.34 out of a possible 4 in terms of able to reach the right person. They're generally speaking, they're having an overall positive experience. And so that's really nice to see. Of course, we can always improve. We're working to improve. That's part of the service standards that Rob just talked about. And just working on our systems and our processes. People, process, place, you've heard me say it before, and we're actively working on that to improve those scores. Top priorities for communication, that has changed drastically in the years that I've been here with this district. Text message was nowhere on the list when I was first hired, and now it's the number 2 modality that people wish to be communicated with in terms of district level communication. So we're actively working on ways of capturing better data in terms of household contact data, allowing families to sign up easier and cleaner. We've done a beautiful job this year with automatic signups. So every family is automatically signed up to receive the communication from their child's school building the minute that they're assigned to that school building. So they don't actually have to go subscribe to some newsletter or do anything. It comes to them. And that's our hope, is that information just comes to families. They don't have to actively seek it out.
Do families get the opportunity to opt out?
I'm sorry?
Is there an opt-out opportunity for families?
Yes. On every one of our emails at the bottom is an unsubscribe. And there are families who use it intentionally and accidentally, and we can help with both of those. In terms of our staff, the left-hand chart is the length of employment of our staff who took the time to take this survey. And so I really think it's important to note the long history that our staff have with this district. It's a point of pride for us to have so many staff members that have such a legacy here, and I think such a value added to our children's experience in this district. Then would you advise a friend to apply here? I think that's a very nice confidence level to see among our staff that yes, they would advise a friend to apply for a position here. It's not all sunshine and roses, and certainly that's what we see out of survey data, and that's really honestly what we look for. Some of the points of pride, we can do a better job of forwarding those to our staff so that they hear the kudos, because I don't think they always hear the kudos, and that's nice to hear, so we'll work on that. We're also going to work on the following points that you're about to see. In terms of folks feeling represented or respected and welcomed in our school buildings, we can do a much better job of that, certainly on the respected side. We have a lot of work that we're doing and still left to do in the equity and inclusion landscape, and then certainly with service standards. And so these are a focal point for us to reflect on and to work harder on in the coming school years. And I say years because this is lifelong work. This is not work that stops. We use something called the NPS score, which is a net promoter score, and it's really just about who's an advocate for your district, who's an advocate for your organization. And so what you see here is the little formula. You can see the frowny red faces, the blue kind of, meh faces, I'll call them, and then the green smiley faces. And so you get your detractors, your passives, and your promoters. And really, it's all about the detractors and the promoters. And detractors cancel out promoters, because when we pose the question on a scale of 1 to 10, would you recommend Bloomfield Hills Schools to basically anyone you know, a friend, a colleague, a coworker, neighbor? They give us a rating on that scale from 1 to 10, or really from 0 to 10. And so anyone who's a 0 to 6 is a detractor, meaning that they count against you. They count against you in points value in this mathematical equation. Your promoters are 9s and 10s, and then those in the 7s and 8s are considered passives, and they're not considered in this equation. So when we look at our number, in 2017, it was a 36.55. In 2018, it's 25.54, which obviously my eyes came out of my head and I said, what happened? So we started to break it down based off of how you identified in that first question of, are you a parent or guardian? Are you a resident? And really it was the students. It was factoring in the students into the survey that brought that score down. So that's work that we need to do, and a place where we can look and dig deeper and start to hopefully bring that score up. And we'll find a lot of factors that make someone a detractor or make them passive, and then we can work on those specific points and try to get better. So I had to reflect for a while on this comment that I came across in our open comment section. I would be surprised if this comment even gets read. Every year I take the time to fill out this survey, and every year nothing changes. If you want to engage me, contact me. Otherwise, this is the last survey I will fill out. Unfortunately, it's signed anonymous. Otherwise, I would reach out to this individual, but there was no contact information for me to do so along with the comment. That said, I do think that this is representative of some people in our district who feel that, unfortunately, because we often fail to communicate the work that we do as a direct result of this survey or a direct result of us digging deeper and working harder, that sometimes their voice isn't heard. So I am committing to working harder on that. And certainly as we look strategically at this Bloomfield forward and moving forward as a district and using some of these points that they have so generously given us, because it is a long time to take this survey and to give their feedback, that we will use that for our action items moving forward. And then we'll take the time to make sure that we articulate how the comments were used, how the feedback was used, what we looked at, and how those decisions were then formulated based on all of that. So I think that cycle is very important for us to adopt, and we're working on what that looks like right now. Part of that is analysis of the open-ended text. It is a lot of comments to read, and some of them are all over the place. And despite that you might ask someone on one question to reflect on what they kind of just gave you, they kind of go over here. And so it has nothing to do with the questions that you just asked, and it's over here in left-hand field, and we don't want to lose those comments. It's kind of like when we lead activities and we do a parking lot. No good idea gets lost in this shuffle. And so this actually helps us to take this big volume of comments and narrow it down into some buckets. Then we can actually look at those and start to get some action items. And the tool itself actually has action item planning within it, which is a neat tool that I'm learning more about right now, where once you have this sentiment value and you find out that, okay, healthier. Okay, we want healthier food. What does that mean? And we start to dive into it. And when you dive into healthier, you find words like organic, vegetarian, vegan, locally grown, grow it from the school garden. You start to find those clear action items where we already have school gardens. We already have locally grown food right here. Dr. Glass is growing locally grown food right at Bowers Farm right now that he could share with the kids, right? So we have these tools, but it's about connecting the tools. It's connecting the people, the resources, the projects, all the programs that are already in place with Aramark, with our food service provider. And so trying to get, again, from service standards, looking at our processes and our people and what we have available to attack the word healthier that was extracted from hundreds and hundreds of comments about our food and the quality and the choices and variety and menus and all of those things. We can make sense of a whole lot of comments very, very quickly with this tool. We can extract things from it, and then it actually has an action item planner where we can put in the action item of grow food at school gardens, put on menu, right? And have kids maybe talk about what's on the menu and make choices and make plans. And of course we have to live within USDA guidelines, and Marianne has a lot of things she has to live within, but we can work together on that and start to strive toward that. So again, with all of these different things, it helps us chew on those comments that much easier and move on them that much faster. Because when you have literally thousands of comments and some of them do, it's that great thought, but it didn't address what we asked over here, but let's do something with that. We can now do something that much faster.
So we'll chew on the nutritional aspect.
Yes.
Good pun.
Yes. Okay, so next steps. So right now what we're doing is we're doing a full analysis of this data. Like I said, you're talking about thousands of comments. It's a lot of graphs and charts. It's a lot of data. One of the things that we are learning from this is it's too much. It's too many questions. It's too much data all at once at a time of the school year when not a lot of parents have time or residents have time, and certainly not students and staff, to sit down and take a lengthy survey. So we're looking at the survey. We're looking at how can we break it up. Fortunately, this company does what they call pulse surveys, and they link their pulse surveys to dashboards. So you issue a pulse survey, and you issue it at certain frequencies, whether it's weekly, monthly, at intervals based on activities, based on, so we look at the cycle, we look at the calendar, we decide when the pulse surveys are going to be issued, and then the data that comes in goes on a live dashboard that can then be played with. And there's an ISD in Texas that I'm learning a lot from that has made their dashboard public. And we've talked a lot about a dashboard in this district for a long time that was drag and drop, plug and play, where you could actually manipulate what's on the screen and really drag and drop and play with it and see, okay, but what about first grade? Anyone who has a kid in first grade, what do they say? And then you can actually select, okay, only first grade parents. What do they think about the food? Okay, now only ninth grade parents. And so we're developing that right now with the help of Qualtrics. We're putting into place these pulse surveys. We're actually leading with our staff because we think it's really, really important to know what our staff think, because they hear from parents directly. They hear from kids directly. They're that first point of contact that gets that directly from the source, and then they can regurgitate it in those surveys. But we also want to develop pulse surveys for families. We want to develop them for students on all areas: social, emotional, teacher quality, staff quality, transportation, food, just everything, wants, needs, kind of all aspects of their life. So we're developing that now. We're reviewing the data. And then again, the administrators are all planning around this. Strategic planning is occurring. And then as far as teachers and support staff, a lot of it is starting to come up, but it's only the second week of school, so we don't want to bombard them with too much just yet. And we've been reviewing this over the summer, so we'll get that out to the staff as well so that they can reflect on it. And then finally, sharing it out. So that starts tonight with this report, and then eventually making it onto the website. And then, like I said, we are really hoping to have those dashboards built, at least the first one that we can have sometime this school year, so people can see the data that's coming in with the pulse surveys and play with it, and answer their own questions. So more of an interactive community experience. Any questions?
Oh, that's great that you're going to be able to get to be that, refined. That's fabulous. Howard?
You talk about pulse surveys. Is that something that can be set up dynamically, such that if there's an issue that comes up in the middle of the year, that we can customize that pulse survey? Let's say after Parkland, and that was in February, and we wanted to find out what our community thought, because we had the opportunity to adjust our sinking fund that summer. So what do you think about this because of something that happens at current events or something happening in our district? Are we able to do that with the pulse survey?
Yeah, so the pulse surveys are going to be that regular interval feedback that's pretty standard, and you don't want to change that question set because it's going to be reflected on the dashboard, and you want to have longevity with the data to look at it over time. But we certainly are using this tool to pivot in the way that you talked about. In fact, this survey didn't have the robust question set on security that it ended up with, because after Parkland, we issued this and we started to ask the community what sorts of safety security elements would you like us to invest in from our sinking fund, or because that was around the same time as the sinking fund renewal. And so we threw in a whole bunch of questions into this survey at the last second that we were able to then get great feedback and data on to use all summer. Our safety security team has been meeting to reflect on the data, to talk about the answers that came in, to prioritize the funding, to try to figure out, okay, which vendors do we need to contact first? How are we doing this? And to look at it as granular as school building level, because what surprised us was there was an answer at the district level of what people wanted us to spend sinking fund dollars on in terms of safety security. But then as we started to look building by building, even between our 3 Bloomfield locations, there were differences in what they wanted to prioritize, first, second, third, fourth, all the way down to 10th. And so we looked at just the first 5 priorities of every single school, and then we were able to have really robust conversations all summer with the safety security team to address those and to really start to action item those. And actually the community will see those very soon.
I'm just thinking the technology of the pulse survey can be used 2 ways. It can be used for kind of ongoing snapshots in terms of how you're doing in general, but it also could be customized for particular issues if they happen to come up in the middle of the year.
Yeah,
So
the
you can do
tool is
both.
very customizable.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it seems like sort of what they did with the safety. So I realized that you had a lot of input from about the safety. I didn't realize exactly the depth that you were able to do it and how quickly you did it, right? I realized that you had a lot of great information. But I think that with a survey, this is tons of information, right? And that is an example then of really closing the loop, right? Because getting the information is one thing, and then closing the loop, as you mentioned, the safety, that's incredibly important. I didn't ask this in the study session, because we've already talked about this, but when you went through the comments, did you kind of triage them too? Were there, like, these are some urgent, sometimes people find different ways to communicate very urgent things. You know what I mean? Like, these are things that are incredibly urgent, have to be done now, and then these are, you know what I mean? Triage them and the length of time you had to respond. Did you?
Yeah, absolutely. And we also use that sentiment analysis that helps us flag them, because the company that we use just recently partnered with IBM Watson so that they can use artificial intelligence to analyze the text and flag things that are of a certain nature so that we can look at them right away. Because we did ask students on this about bullying. In fact, we used a heat map tool to ask them, please click on the most recent places physically in the high school where you've been bullied. And then what resulted from that was an actual heat map where it glows red in these dots that indicate instances of bullying. And so that was something we could triage very quickly, get right into the hands of hall monitors, discuss right away with building administration, okay, these are some zones where we need some extra supervision and we need to be watching closer. And so those those tools just help us move that much faster on the results from this survey, rather than, previously it was months, if not years, of laboring over and trying to make sense. And we can reissue questions. So if something pops up that's particularly alarming and we have questions and we need to know more about this, we can put together a survey so quickly, issue it out, and then get that additional feedback to take even deeper action on that subject. So those are the ways we're starting to use the tool.
So what are from that, follow up to that, what are the 3 to 4 top emergency items that you saw from the survey comments?
That's a good question. So, and I think they're going to be different for each of us. In our own content areas, there are things that you look at and you think, oh, that's a red flag for me as learning services, or that's a red flag for me as HR. I think that as we look at it as a team, it's our responsibility in our own content areas to identify those red flags. I know that one of the things that I'm going to be actively working on is showing appreciation and gratitude and making people feel that they are valued for the work that they provide. We know that we can do much better with the recognition that we do of everybody in the district, not just staff and not just students, but everybody, parent, volunteers. That came through loud and clear on the survey, that we don't do enough recognition. And people in this district contribute so much of their time and their energy. So we're brainstorming ways of showing our gratitude and really making sure that people do feel valued for what they bring to the table. So I know that's one of my urgent things that I'll be working on, but certainly, that bullying one, boy, that goes right to Charlie, that goes to his team, that goes to the hall monitors, and they're owning that right now. And so I think that's, for each of us, there will be different urgent issues.
Paul, what I'm thinking is looking at the next steps. Number 1, cabinet review for strategic planning purposes. The cabinet will be looking at it, and hopefully over the next few weeks, we'll feed that into the strategic planning process that Dr. Glass and President Van Ooyen was just talking about, that's going to be happening over the next 30 to 60 days.
That's a good time frame.
Yep, because we learned a lot about, you asked about urgent issues. We asked about financial resources and time investment for the district. Where would you like to see us invest our time and our resources? And that came across loud and clear, and there were certainly some big, red flags from certain buildings in, woo, we'd really like you to invest over here because we think this is lacking. But so that might be that for that building. And then over here, we don't see that at all. They're very satisfied with that category. So that's where being able to get so granular really benefits us, because just because the entire district says something doesn't mean that there's one building crying out for help over here. And we can't see that unless we can break it down to that level and then really digest the data and use it with other data. So, if you don't know, if you don't know this question, the answer to this question, you can't answer this question over here. So, that is why the survey was so long and so big, but now it helps us really pull in different data pieces and say, I wonder, and then yank in and figure out, okay, this is what we're dealing with.
Good job.
Other board comments, questions for Shira? Well, we will be excited to keep seeing the analysis as it comes through, and see how it can help us move forward and improve our processes and how we are able to do the work we're doing together.
Thank you.